What's going on, brother? David Waldy with you here today, and we're going to be talking about the big S word. And no, it is not sex. We're actually going to be talking about suicide. And even if you're someone who doesn't deal with suicidal ideation or you haven't navigated these challenges, I would encourage you to stick through this video because I think you may find some useful tools in helping other brothers who are navigating this. Because unless you've been living under a rock, you understand that suicide is a major problem in the day and age that we live in. It is taking out men left and right. And so this is going to be kind of a contrasting video where I want to speak specifically from my experience in navigating suicidal ideation, hopefully to encourage those of you that maybe are there right now or you've navigated that recently. And again, also to empower those of you that have never dealt with this to be able to serve your brothers in a better capacity. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I was driving down the interstate going about 80 miles an hour and I had a panic attack. I almost blacked out. I pulled to the edge of the road and I was about 60 pounds heavier than I am right now. I was working 70, 80, 90 hours a week. I felt like I was failing as a father. I felt like I was failing as a husband. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I just hated what I saw. I typically tried to avoid even looking at myself in the mirror because I was so ashamed and embarrassed. And so this day, as I'm driving down the interstate and I have this, the best I can describe it was a panic attack where I pull over and I feel like I want to black out and I just am overtaken with rage. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, punching my steering wheel with everything inside of me. Every form of profanity is spewing from my mouth, directed straight at God. I was so angry. And I heard 3 words that day. As I'm sitting there, tears streaming down my face is beet red, and I'm just, my knuckles are sore from trying to beat in my steering wheel. The 3 words that I heard were, I love you. Of course, that broke me even more, and I went on with my day just so confused. I felt like there was little hope left in life because from the outside looking in, I was the good Christian guy. All of the markings and trappings of what a good Christian is supposed to look like. Very active in the church, doing well financially, great relationships, the whole 9 yards. At that point, I had achieved the quote-unquote American dream as far as career and finances are concerned. I had the glass corner office, the company car, I had the 6-figure salary, the house, and all the stuff, the trappings of success. And mind you, even through this process, I was still on fire, loving Jesus, active in ministry, leading worship, serving in small groups, doing all of the things, but something inside of me was broken. And I didn't understand what was going on. So this incident, driving down the interstate, about 3 weeks later, I found myself at home one evening alone. I don't remember where my wife or my daughter was at that time, but I remember walking into my bathroom, holding my firearm and looking at myself in the mirror. And the flood of thoughts, some of you understand this, of what my life was worth and how people would be better off if I wasn't here, and how all of the stress and anger and pain and frustration, how it felt like it was too much. That if God really loved me, he would have fixed it by now. If God really cared about me, he would have given me the answers. If God really loved me, why would he allow me to suffer like this? And it was through this process that was my mind racing 1,000,000 miles per hour. I remember lifting my firearm up to my head and looking at myself straight in the eyes in the mirror, thinking, this is it, I'm done. And immediately I had a flashback to a few weeks prior when I was driving down the interstate and I heard those 3 words, I love you. I remember in that moment, I slowly started to set the gun down, still looking into my eyes, but really struggling to keep eye contact because I just was disgusted by what I saw. And it was in this moment where I realized that I had a part to play in why I was here at this moment in time. It was very uncomfortable, but I realized that I was part of the cause, was part of the problem that had got me to this point. But the hope that came in that was this. Because, to many of you listening right now, you're like, that doesn't sound very encouraging. You're already in this, I was already in this negative headspace, and now I'm just layering on guilt and shame. Like, this is partially your fault, dude. Except what I didn't recognize was that there was hope hidden within it. Because if I was part of the problem, if part of why I was at this stage, in this state, if I was part of the problem, that meant that I was part of the solution. As I stood there staring into my eyes, I just, again, disgusted with what I saw. I started to recognize, and I feel like this was really the Lord, the areas of my life that I had placed responsibility on Him, and the parts of my life where I had placed responsibility on the devil as well. It's like, well, that's God's to figure out. Oh, that's just the work of the devil. And what I failed to recognize for the overwhelming majority of my life is that I was avoiding responsibility for anything, any of my actions. I had lived in this state of justification where I felt self-righteous and justified that I was a good Christian doing all the right things, and so it would all work out. And through this process, what I started to see was that I did have the answer. God had never withheld it from me, and it wasn't that He didn't love me. It was that I had made choices and decisions that had led me to that moment. And I realized that ownership and accountability were the two things that I was lacking in my life. Not accountability for the sake of trying to have someone keep me on the right path. No, it was accountability through the sense of I needed to be able to share my heart and to take off my honor or my armor in a way that I could be seen for who I was. I needed true brotherhood. I needed men around me who could inspire and encourage and pick me up. But I also needed men who didn't feel like they had to have all the right answers. I just wanted a safe place that I could be where I was, knowing that I had brothers carrying it with me. And the ownership component, I started to look at my life, my health, my relationships, my relationship with God, relationship with my wife, with my daughter, relationship with others, my financial situation, my career path, all these things, and all of this overwhelming frustration that I had lived with for most of my life of wondering, God, why can't you just show me the way? Show me the path. Tell me what I'm supposed to be doing here, because I'm doing all the things I think that are the right things. But why do I not have any peace? Why do I not have any joy? Why do I not have any contentment? Why is life such a burden? And I feel like everything is attacking all the time. I watch the news and I listen to the radio and I get on social media and everything's going to hell in a handbasket. How in the world am I supposed to be thriving in this type of environment? And I realized, and I feel like this was truly the Lord, is that I had created a life where I had believed something. I had believed that if I could just fix my relationship with my wife, if I could just fix my boss, if I could fix the government, if I could fix the medical community, if I could fix my kids, if I could fix whatever, if I could change the stuff that was going on out there, then I would be okay. That life was bad because of everything else. And what the Lord spoke to me through this process was the fact that I had allowed this belief in my life, and I had chosen to adopt it and to carry it and to place all of the judgment and responsibility on everyone else but myself. Now, this is a very challenging thing, especially in light of talking about suicide, because there really is no handbook for how to navigate these things. And I simply share from my perspective because this is my story and what happened. I started to look at my life and say, okay, I have to stop trying to control the things that I was never meant to control. And I have to start focusing on controlling the only things that I can control. And brother, you and I both know the only thing that we can control, truly, the only thing that we can truly control is ourselves, our choices, our decisions. And so it was in that moment where I started to make changes that were very uncomfortable and not fun at all. I started being more intentional with the food I was putting in my body, with getting out and exercising, with not snoozing. I was creating a plan, connecting with other brothers, started reading. I started looking at my habits, my routines and decisions, the places in my life that I could control. And I started to control those things. And as I started to control those things, my perspective on life started to change. Until eventually I would come to a place where I discovered what I believe to be a tremendous gift, is that the reason that we feel the things that we do, it has nothing to do with what's going on out there. It has everything to do with what's going on in here and in here. That when you're willing to take a step back and you're willing to take ownership for the parts of your life, I'm not saying you haven't been through stuff. We've all been through stuff. I don't want to demean or diminish the pain, the challenges in your life. But what I do want to remind you of is that regardless of what it was, it is now in the past. It is gone. It is lost. It has been released from you. You in this moment right now and every moment moving forward have a choice. You have a choice to be defined by what happened to you, or to choose to define yourself in alignment with the heart of the Father and remind yourself of the man that he's called you to be, and to use the gifts that he's given you to control the things that you can control. Because what I'd started to do is I'd realized that I wasn't controlling the things that I could control, because those were God's job, God's responsibility. And anything that wasn't good or wasn't God, I would just say, well, it's just the work of the enemy. Not today, Satan. And I had created a life that was devoid of any form of responsibility and accountability, discipline, ownership. So my encouragement to you today, brother, if you are dealing with this suicidal ideation, there are two things that I want you to do that are part of your challenge, your homework for this video. Number one is I want you to plug in to this community even more. The Promise Keepers community, to find the brotherhood that you've been a part of, and to connect with other men sharing what's going on, not so that you can always try and find the right answers, but just to be kneecap to kneecap, shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, allowing each other to take your armor off so that you can actually exercise scripture that says faithful are the wounds of a friend, where you have a brother look you in the eye and remind you of who you are in love. And it's in this place where you can feel seen, you can feel heard, you can feel understood. And it's not about having all the right answers. It's just knowing that you're not alone. And for those of you that have not and are not navigating suicidal ideation, my challenge to you today is to be that for another brother, to reach out to the men in your life and say, brother, I just want you to know, if you ever get to a very dark place, I'm here for you. Please know that I will stand in the gap. I will carry you close. I will be in your corner, but you have to be courageous enough to let me know if or when you ever get to that place. And I'm giving you permission, please, day or night, whenever, if you're there, call me. I might not have all the right answers, but I will hold space for you. That's challenge number one. And challenge number two is taking an honest assessment of the areas of your life that you're failing to take ownership. Are there parts of your life that you've been pushing off as responsibilities that are God's, that really are within your control? Because when you can start to identify the areas of your life that you can control, and you remind yourself of what he said about you, you'll start to recognize you have a lot more control than you ever believed that you did. And that a man that is truly surrendered to the heart of a father, that walks as a king, he has self-control. Oh, brother, I'm with you and for you. Please reach out to someone if you're struggling. You do not have to go through this alone.